Most people drift through life unaware of the quiet electricity they trail behind them. They scroll past glossy photos, compare themselves to polished influencers, and decide, somewhere deep down, that real magnetism belongs to someone else. Carl Jung would shake his head at that. He believed the truest allure lives beneath the mirror's surface, inside the pulse of archetypal energy you carry without trying, the spark that slips past your conscious mind and lights up the room before you've even spoken. Imagine a frequency only the unconscious can hear. You hum at that pitch every day, yet the melody is so close to your own heartbeat you don't recognize it. Everyone else, though, they feel it. They adjust their posture, stumble through greetings, or linger half a second longer with that soft focused stare that says, something about you is different. The wonderful twist? The less you chase that quality, the louder it rings. So let me walk you through 12 subtle Jungian indicators that you're far more captivating than you give yourself credit for. Listen with the part of you that's tired of self-doubt and hungry for a truer story. By the end, you'll start noticing signals you once dismissed as coincidence, and you'll never stand in front of a mirror the same way again. First, notice the tremor you summon in confident men. The guy who usually commands the conversation suddenly loses the rhythm near you. His jokes land flat, his hands search for non-existent lint on his shirt, and he forgets the point of his own story halfway through a sentence. You might assume he's unimpressed or distracted. In reality, you just stirred his anima, Jung's name for the inner feminine he rarely lets surface. It isn't your hairstyle or your perfume, it's the raw authenticity you exhale. His nervous system scrambles because, for a heartbeat, he's face to face with a part of himself he barely understands. Slip into a cafe and you'll catch the next sign in the corners of strangers' eyes. One glance could be curiosity, but the second, involuntary swivel of the head is a telltale Jungian reflex. Something in you brushed their collective unconscious, whispering, "Remember me?" They don't know why they're looking back. They only know it feels necessary. You're not flaunting anything. Your presence alone echoes with archetypal familiarity, like running your fingers across a forgotten melody they've loved since childhood. Then there's the paradox of compliments on your off days. When you shuffle out for groceries convinced your hair looks like yesterday's pillow, someone still pauses to say, "There's something about your smile." That disconnect between your self-critique and their admiration is textbook shadow work. Jung taught that while we fixate on flaws, our dormant light spills out unconsciously. On the mornings you don't perform for the world, the veil drops and that unfiltered glow slips through. You can't fake it, you can't style it. Yet there it is, catching strangers off guard while you debate avocados in aisle 3. Another clue hides in the smallest excuses people invent just to orbit you. A colleague who already knows how the printer works suddenly needs you to show him. Again, the neighbor with 20 streaming services asks which documentary you recommend tonight. These requests aren't about printers or movie tips. They're thin rationalizations their conscious mind fabricates to justify proximity to the charge you emit. Jung called such coincidences synchronicities, the psyche's way of engineering meetings that the ego isn't brave enough to schedule outright. When those tiny, unimportant favors stack up around you, recognize them for what they are, signposts pointing straight at your magnetic field. Pause here and take a breath. Feel the ground under your feet. You haven't changed your clothes, your job, or your face in the last minute, yet I'll wager you're already sensing a shift. That's awareness catching up with reality. And the moment awareness arrives, posture straightens, voice settles, eyes brighten, because the body loves aligning with hidden truth. Let's keep moving. Sometimes you'll encounter resistance rather than favor. A sharp remark from someone you barely know, an eye roll disguised as harmless banter, criticism that lands nowhere near the target. It stings, and you might replay the scene wondering what you did wrong. Jung would say you did nothing except stand there in your wholeness. Your genuine ease can yank someone else's rejected potential into the light, and their shadow reflex is to swat at the mirror. Remember, hostility aimed at qualities you didn't flaunt usually tells you more about their unacknowledged wounds than about any flaw in you. Walk down any street and count the unprompted smiles. Not the polite, lips-only smile, Watch for the version that relaxes shoulders and softens eyes. That's an unconscious salute to the integrated self. When you radiate acceptance of who you are, people feel, for a flicker, accepted in who they are. Their nervous system thanks you with an involuntary grin. They may never say a word, but that silent moment is proof that your presence tuned the environment upward half a notch. By now, you might be ticking boxes in your head, realizing these patterns aren't random at all. And we're only halfway through. The remaining signs dive even deeper into Jung's map of the psyche, territory where attraction isn't about looks or charm, but about the gravity of an authentic soul. Before we step across that threshold, let me remind you, none of this is a call to manufacture persona. The power was already humming inside you long before this video found you. What changes today is your willingness to believe the evidence. Keep listening, and the next time your phone lights up with a "just thinking about you" text, or a hush falls over a room as you leave it, you'll recognize it not as luck or fluke, but as the natural echo of a self finally seen. When a man already tethered to someone else still tracks your movements with that half-second linger, it often feels awkward, even a little unfair. You may wonder if you accidentally encourage something. Truth is, you could stand there reading bus schedules and the effect would be identical. Jung taught that every man carries an inner feminine blueprint, longing for completion. When your authenticity resembles that blueprint, words unfiltered, posture relaxed, laughter honest, his unconscious spots the missing puzzle piece. Social vows might clamp his shoulders rigid, but the eyes give him away. That lingering look is less about temptation and more about recognition, like stumbling across a childhood song on the radio. It's not an invitation to chaos, it's a mirror reflecting what he hasn't integrated. Remember that distinction, and you'll spare yourself needless guilt. You'll notice a parallel phenomenon on your phone. Post a casual photo, no strategic angle, no skin on display, maybe just a coffee cup balancing on your knee, and watch comments bloom. Friends assume you meticulously crafted that resonance, but you know you snapped it between errands. Why does it land harder than airbrushed glamour shots? Because the digital crowd is drowning in personas, and your unpolished moment functions like fresh air in a crowded room. Individuation, Jung said, is louder than any filter. Alignment radiates through pixels. The algorithm can't code it, but human nervous systems pick it up instantly. The likes, the saves, the private messages, they aren't applause for perfection, they're applause for permission. By staying true to yourself online, you give thousands a silent nod that doing the same is possible. Then there's the strange dance of attraction and retreat. A man appears in your orbit, blazing with enthusiasm. Texts first thing in the morning, laughs at jokes you didn't even think were funny, remembers tiny details you mentioned once. Suddenly he hits the brakes. A ghost quiet withdrawal that leaves you scrolling through messages for clues. Days later, he resurfaces as though nothing happened, asking about your weekend plans. Jung called this pendulum effect enantiodromia, the psyche's tendency to swing to its opposite when an energy grows too intense. Your presence triggers a depth he didn't expect. The ego's instinct is to sprint for safety until the pressure cools. When he re-emerges, it's not caprice. It's a nervous system now brave enough for another sip. If you can recognize the pattern, you'll spare yourself the story that you did something wrong. His struggle belongs to him. Your job is simply to remain centered in your own rhythm. Here's a twist almost everyone misses. The mightier your impact, the harder it is for you to feel it. You stand on the inside of your own aura, the way a candle sits inside its own halo of light. Jung believed that the conscious mind is a poor judge of the soul's true voltage. So you measure your worth with familiar yardsticks, salary, compliments, mirrors, and conclude you're still average. Meanwhile, rooms hush when you enter and widen when you leave. But you're busy wondering if your shoe choice was a mistake. This blind spot isn't humility, it's architecture. The ego can't hold the whole of what you are. Yet the moment you even suspect your magnitude, a subtle calibration unfolds. Shoulders back, breath lower, smile settling at the corners of your eyes. You're not inflating yourself. You're finally letting the facts of your impact land. Pay attention to departures. You leave a dinner early, and later someone texts, "It wasn't the same after you slipped out." They can't articulate why, They only felt the energy thin. Jung called the field created by an integrated self a temenos, a kind of invisible sanctuary. While you're present, conversation has texture, color, buoyancy. Step away, and the temperature drops a few degrees. People notice absence more sharply than presence because the mind is calibrated to detect loss. Next time someone says, "You were missed last night," hear it as data. The atmosphere registers your frequency, and its absence leaves an audible hush. Silence is another metric. Sit across from someone and let the chatter fade. If the pause swells with warmth instead of awkward fidgeting, you've entered the territory Jung considered the most intimate. Connection beyond language. In that hush, the other person's nervous system is busy recalibrating, filing away the discovery that they can be fully seen without performing. They might sigh, smile softly, or look down at their hands as though words would only clutter the moment. When silence feels thick, almost electric, that's not boredom, that's shared presence doing its quiet work. Not all responses are serene. Some women will meet your softness with claws. A glance becomes a glare. A passing remark hides a blade. It's tempting to shrink in such moments. Don't. You just collided with another person's shadow, qualities she exiled in herself, but recognizes shimmering in you. Fighting the mirror won't dim your light, it just exhausts her. You're not obligated to finish every duel the unconscious starts. A simple smile and a measured breath often disarm the situation faster than any defense. Collect these clues the way a naturalist logs bird calls. Not to inflate your ego, but to map reality. Men stumbling through sentences, strangers offering unearned smiles, praise arriving on your worst hair day, DMs pinging after a 2-second clip of your morning coffee, tension spikes when you exit a room, comfortable silence wrapping conversations like velvet, sudden hostility from unexpected corners. All of it is evidence. Evidence that attraction has layers deeper than cosmetics, deeper even than charisma. It starts in the furnace of authenticity and radiates outward into gestures, glances, and atmospheres. If you doubt any of this, perform a simple experiment. Pick a day. Commit to zero performance, no strategic charm, no curated poses. Walk, breathe, and speak from that unedited place. Then watch. Notice who drifts closer, who lingers, who falters mid-sentence, who texts after months of radio silence. Data will accumulate faster than you expect. You're not hunting for validation. You're gathering proof of what was always true. You'll never have total visibility on your own glow. That's built into the design. But you can learn to trust the reflections in other people's eyes. Every nervous fidget, every second glance, every inexplicable smile, every oddly intense silence. Each is a vote cast by the collective unconscious, confirming the radiance you keep underestimating. Let the evidence stand. And when doubt creeps in, remember Jung's quiet assurance. The self you're becoming is already alive, already working its quiet magic, whether or not the ego can keep up. So where does all this leave you, practically speaking, when the next morning alarm buzzes and you're staring at your own reflection? Start by trading scrutiny for curiosity. Instead of hunting flaws, ask, what ripple will I set off today just by being genuine? That single shift rescues you from the treadmill of self-fixing and drops you into the living laboratory of experience, where the feedback loop never lies. You'll begin to notice how doors open a beat faster, how conversations bend toward you, how even small talk with the barista feels less like a transaction and more like a shared wavelength. These aren't accidents. They're micro-confirmations of the resonance you've been broadcasting all along. Carry that awareness into your body. When you walk, let each step land as though the ground is lucky to meet your foot. Not arrogance, gratitude. When you breathe, fill the lower ribs first, the way a singer does before the note. A steady diaphragm sends a memo to the nervous system that you're safe, and safety is the most magnetic scent in the world. People track it instinctively. They want to be near the person who feels at home in their own skin, because maybe, just maybe, that ease is contagious. Pay attention to the space between words. Conversation is more than verbal ping-pong. It's a dance of pauses, glances, micro-gestures. If you can let a moment hang without rushing to occupy it, you invite the other person's deeper layers to surface. That kind of listening registers as a gift, even when they can't explain why they leave the exchange lighter than they entered. Jung said that what we fail to make conscious appears outside as fate. By holding space instead of filling it, you give someone's unconscious a chance to speak its quiet truths, and they'll remember you for that long after they forget the actual sentences. Now consider the flip side. Why do jealous eyes target you in unexpected places? Because your ease threatens the economics of comparison. You prove that worth isn't a commodity to compete for. It's an inheritance to claim. People who've built their identity on one-upmanship feel the ground tilt when you show up unarmed and still radiant. Their criticism, thinly disguised as advice or humor, is a last-ditch attempt to restore the old scorecard. You're under no obligation to play. A nod, a half-smile, and a silent blessing, may you find what you're projecting, frees you from the hook every time. Let's circle back to technology for a moment. The next time a modest post of yours spikes in engagement, resist the urge to reverse engineer the magic. You'll be tempted to ask, was it the lighting, the caption, the timestamp? Those variables matter far less than the congruence behind the lens. Authenticity can't be throttled by algorithms because it isn't a tactic, it's a tuning fork. Hit the fork and the air vibrates. Whether 10 people or 10,000 notice is secondary. The real victory is living unedited in a world begging for edits. Some evenings you'll replay the day and feel nothing remarkable happened. No lingering stares, no sudden compliments, no tectonic silences. Don't take that as evidence the current switched off. Energy isn't fireworks. Sometimes it's a tide quietly sculpting the shoreline. Impacts unfold downstream, an inspired text from a colleague 3 days later, a stranger's surprise kindness that traces back to a smile you offered in passing. The psyche keeps its own calendar, and cause and effect often hide behind time delay curtains. Trust the process. And what about romance itself? The raw question beneath all these signs. Awareness of your magnetism doesn't guarantee fairy tales. Some people will misread the signal and cling, others will idolize you, a few will sprint the other way because they're not ready to meet themselves in your mirror. Your task is simply to stay anchored. Attraction is an invitation, not a contract. You get to discern who earns access to the deeper chambers of your life. Every no you offer from self-respect sharpens the yes you'll eventually give from full-bodied choice. There will be mornings when self-doubt ambushes you anyway. Maybe a comment struck a nerve, or comparison crept in via a glossy feed. On those days, borrow Jung's prescription for shadow work. Sit with the discomfort, name the narrative, and then ask, whose voice is this? Often you'll discover it isn't yours, just an echo of marketing, childhood culture. Thank the voice for its concern and remind it that you're piloting a different story now. Do this enough, and the inner committee of critics loses quorum. As this video winds down, here's your field guide to recalling the 12 signals. Nervous brilliance flickering in confident men. Second glances that snap back like magnets. Praise arriving precisely when you feel least dazzling. Tiny errands invent to orbit your presence. Resistance or rivalry that springs from unspoken envy. Unbidden, full-face smiles from strangers on sidewalks. Eyes that linger even behind committed vows. Low-effort posts that somehow outperform polished campaigns. The pendulum suitor who alternates heat and distance. Your own puzzling blindness to the ripple you cause. Rooms that feel colder once you've exited. Silences that expand instead of shrink. See them, log them, but don't cling to them. They're markers, not medals, evidence, not identity. Your worth is older than every indicator and independent of every reaction. Jung's central revelation was that the treasure you chase outwardly already lives inside, waiting for the conscious mind to bow in recognition. The external world merely echoes that interior fact back to you in 100 subtle dialects. So I'll leave you with a challenge. Over the next week, commit to documenting at least 3 moments that fit any of these 12 patterns. Jot them down without judgment, just the raw observation. At week's end, read your list aloud. Hearing your own voice recite the evidence interrupts years of conditioning more effectively than any pep talk. If you're willing, share one of those moments in the comments. Your story might be the mirror someone else needs to spot their own hidden glow. If today's exploration nudged a truth awaken you, tap the like button so the algorithm knows these conversations matter. Subscribe and ring the bell if you want to keep unpacking the deep architecture of human connection every week. And remember this whenever self-doubt knocks. While you're busy wondering whether you're enough, entire rooms are rearranging themselves around the simple fact that you walked in. That's not ego. That's physics of the soul. And physics doesn't lie.